11.5. So starting off here, we're going to factor this binomial, and we're going to pull out what 20w to the third and negative 25w squared have in common. They share a 5w squared. So if I pull out 5w squared, I get 4w minus 5. Easy enough. Okay, what is the greatest common factor between 10b squared and 6b? They share a 2 and a b. Okay, here we're going to do what is called factor by grouping. And whenever you have a third degree polynomial, if it factors, it's only going to factor by grouping. And we have been solving quadratic equations, which are like x squared equations. If you have an x to the third equation, there are ways to factor it, but there are like 20 different types. And I only know how to factor 2 of the types, kind of 2.5 of the types. The others, I don't know. There are other ways to solve them, and that's how we usually handle them. But if you have a w to the third and it has 4 terms, then we can try factor by grouping. So I group the first 2 together and the second 2 together. And I need a common term in both of those. What does the first one have in common? W squared. And what's left? 5w plus 2. Okay. And then plus, what does the second set have in common? A 3. So I'm going to pull out a 3. And I'm left with 5w plus 2. If this matches that, then factor by grouping will work. If it doesn't, then we don't know how to factor. I in fact don't know how to factor it. There are other tools we can use to find the roots. Okay, instead of learning all of the different types of factoring, we use different methods that are a little bit simpler. So now, look at this and this. What do those 2 rectangles have in common? They share a 5w plus 2. So I'm going to yank out the 5w plus 2. So 5w plus 2. And what's left? A w squared and a plus 3. And then we double check, can either of those factor any further? No, they cannot. All right, let me do another one of those. I group the first 2 together and I pull out a y squared. So 2y plus 3 is left over. And then in the second set, I pull out a 7. And I'm left with 2y plus 3. And these match. So I yank out the 2y plus 3. And I'm left with y squared plus 7. Okay. All right. This one's a little bit tricky, so pay close attention. Pull out a u squared, and we get 3u plus 2. And then I'm going to pull out a 5. And I'm left with negative 3u minus 2. Do those match? Almost. So I want this to match that, and they almost do. How could I fix it so that they do match? What would I need to do? Anybody see it? Take the negative out with it. So I'm going to yank out a negative from each of those, which will change this to -5. And now it's 3u plus 2. Good. Now that they match, I yank that out and yank that out. 3u plus 2 and u squared minus 5. Does this factor? It would if, say, it was a -4, right? U squared minus 4, which is also u squared minus 2 squared, is a difference of perfect squares. So if I had u squared minus 4, it would factor into u minus 2 and u plus 2. If I had u squared minus 25, it would factor into u minus 5 and u plus 5. If I had u squared plus 36, would that factor? No. It has to be a minus. So a plus, the sum of perfect squares does not factor. Let's do another one of these. See if we can get one that has a. Okay, this one's good. Pull out a v squared, and I'm left with 2v minus 5. Pull out a 6, and I'm left with negative 2v plus 5, but those don't match. So instead of pulling out a 6, I'm going to pull out a negative 6. And then both of those will change signs, and the 2v minus 5s match. Factor out the 2v minus 5, and we get v squared minus 6. And does that factor any further? No. If it was v squared minus 9, we could factor it further, but not in that case. Okay, same idea here. The first two share an x, and I'm left with v plus 6. The second two share a negative 5, and I'm left with v plus 30. Oh, sorry, v plus 6. Factor out the v plus 6's, and I'm left with x minus 5. And this, we're just looking, what do these two terms have in common? A 4u, oh, I missed the x, 4x squared u w to the 5th. When I pull that out, I'm left with 7u to the 7th w squared plus 4. The u came out, all the w's came out, and the x squared came out. So that's it. All right. That's everything. Get to work.